Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. A lot has been happening in the past couple of days following the barbaric Israeli attacks on the Lebanese people and the killing of dozens and wounding of thousands of Lebanese people, and we also had the same attacks happening in Syria as well. Everyone was anticipating the speech of the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, which will be the main topic that I will be talking about in this video, including more analysis and talk about what's happening in general and where things are headed. Firstly, I'm going to start off with the comments that are coming from Israel. In Israel, we had multiple statements coming from officials in the security establishment saying that the security situation in the north after the explosion of the pagers and walkie-talkies, it has become more serious, that Hezbollah will respond, and we are preparing for an exchange of blows, the likes of which we have not seen since the beginning of the war. This is coming from Israel. Yoav Gallant also had statements saying that we are approaching a very dangerous stage. We had the Secretary of Defense of the United States, Lloyd Austin. He was due to have a visit in Israel. That was cancelled. That was cancelled to an unknown date. This was reported in Axios and other platforms as well. So the Israelis are preparing. Although in his speech, which I will get to in a second, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah did not specify a date, a time, or many details. So he had this speech, and we also had another statement coming from the top figure in the IRGC in Iran that I will also be talking about. I'm going to start off with the Secretary General of Hezbollah. He had an hour-long speech during which Israel was conducting flights on Lebanon and having sonic booms and having attacks in Lebanon. As a matter of fact, this evening, which was after the speech of Nasrallah, they also conducted some of the biggest attacks in Lebanon, and we also had responses from Hezbollah. Nothing out of the norm that we were used to so far. The only thing that was different with the Israeli attacks is that the Israelis themselves said that these attacks are some of the biggest attacks that they've conducted in Lebanon ever since the beginning of the war. With regards to the speech, the Secretary General Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah stressed in a televised speech on Thursday that, quote, "There is no doubt that the Israeli aggression that took place on Tuesday and Wednesday with the bombing of the pagers is a major and unprecedented aggression and will be met with a severe reckoning and just punishment, whether they expect it or not. I will not talk about a time, place, or form, but will leave the matter to what you hear and see. The reckoning will come, but how and where, we will keep this to ourselves in a very narrow circle." And he said that when he mentioned that Israel conducted an operation that was supposed to be very secretive, so Hezbollah will not be elaborating about the level of response that they will be conducting on Israel. He also said in this operation the enemy crossed all lines, all red lines and laws, and did not care about anything morally or legally. The explosions took place in hospitals, pharmacies, markets, homes, cars, and on public roads where there are many civilians, women, and children, which is accurate. And as a matter of fact, it's quite surprising that we don't have this massive criticism about this mass-scale terror that Israel committed in Lebanon using devices that are available to the mass public. This is a very dangerous step coming from Israel, and it puts a lot of distrust in any electronic device. Are people not worried about that? Again, some people, especially in mainstream media, Western mainstream media primarily, oh no, they're talking about the attack and as if it's nothing. Well, what if Russia did it? What if another country that you don't like did the same operation? Will you have the same response? Of course not, especially when it comes to the level of people affected. He continued, on the second day, the enemy intended to kill thousands carrying the devices. That's in reference to the explosions of the pages and of course the walkie-talkies as well. He said, Nasrallah, that Israel wanted to kill more than 5,000 people. What happened is genocide and a major massacre, to be added to the major massacres committed by the enemy since the creation of this cancerous tumor in our region. It can be called a declaration of war. It can be called a declaration of war, and the terminology here, massacres being committed, and the fact that Nasrallah is saying that, you're talking about civilians being killed as well. Said Nasrallah pointed out that, quote, there is no doubt that we have been exposed to a major security and humanitarian blow that is unprecedented in the history of the resistance in Lebanon, as well as unprecedented at the level of Lebanon and the conflict with the Zionist enemy. We have formed technical and security investigation committees and are studying all hypotheses and have reached a semi-result, but this file is under investigation and a close follow-up, whether from the company to manufacturing to transportation and procedures in Lebanon to distribution, and when we reach a result, the necessary consequences will be built upon. Again, he did not elaborate too much when it comes to how this breach happened, but he admitted that it was a blow. He repeated a couple of times in his speech that it was a very big blow to the resistance in Lebanon. It's not as if it's something light, but he also highlighted that it does not affect its operations. Another important thing that he mentioned is that Israel tried to cause destabilization in the organization of Hezbollah. And he also added that the enemy worked to try and separate the Lebanese front from the Gaza front, and all pressure is aimed at Lebanon, the Lebanese people and the resistance, in order for this front to stop. He added one more interesting thing with that regard. After Tuesday's massacre, we received messages through official and unofficial channels saying that the aim of the strike was for you to stop supporting Gaza. We say to Netanyahu and Gallant that the Lebanese front will not stop before the aggression on Gaza stops. The resistance in Lebanon will not stop supporting and assisting the people of Gaza, the West Bank, and the oppressed. He also added how they tried to separate the other fronts when it comes to Yemen. With regards to Yemen, they offered them to recognize their government and just stop what you're doing, but all of the resistance fronts showed that they are united when it comes to Gaza. The enemy also aimed through the massacres of Tuesday and Wednesday to strike the structure and the command and control systems and spread a state of weakness and confusion in the leadership of Hezbollah. And this has never happened in a single moment. So he's confirming that the operations, like the organization itself, have not been affected. The only way to stop this is to stop the aggression in Gaza, and nothing else will help achieve this. Neither military escalation nor anything else. Rather, what you are doing will increase the displacement of the people, because one of the main things that Israel is talking about now is the fact that they've added the objective of returning the people to the north in Israel, but Hezbollah are telling them that's not going to work. As a matter of fact, it might have more people, you might have more people being forced to leave their homes following more attacks coming from Hezbollah. Gallant and Netanyahu are leading the enemy entity into the abyss, and the foolish, narcissistic, reckless leadership of the enemy will lead this entity into a deep valley. And of course, with regards to the response, like I said, I will not talk about time, place or form, but leave the matter to what you hear and see. The reckoning will come, but how and where, we will keep this to ourselves in a very narrow circle. What do we understand from the speech of the Hezbollah Secretary General Said Hassan Nasrallah? Well, we understand a couple of things. Firstly, that Hezbollah, unlike previous cases, by the way, when it comes to the resistance against Israel, they are not being dragged into what Israel wants to drag them to at the time that Israel chooses. Because don't forget, if Israel carries out such a large-scale operation in Lebanon, they are saying that we immediately want an escalation. So they carried out this surprise attack. They previously said we will be attacking Lebanon in ways we haven't used before and weapons we haven't used before, and now they did. So to them, they want the response to be exactly now. That's not to say that it won't come now or tomorrow or in the next few days or weeks, who knows. But Hezbollah are saying that you have two different paths. The path of the response to what Israel did and the continuation of the supporting front when it comes to Gaza, and that the supporting front will not be affected by what Israel is doing. So you're seeing a very well calculated approach when it comes to Hezbollah, but they will undoubtedly be responding to Israel, especially with the statements that have been used in Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah's speech, especially when it comes to the massacres, the fact that Israel actually wanted to kill all of these people, and that you can call this a declaration of war. And when someone says you call this a declaration of war, or you can call this a declaration of war, that means there's already a justification for something very big to be done with Israel. That's when it comes to Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah's speech, and the situation is very, very tense in Israel as well. Now, it wasn't only Hezbollah who spoke. We also had a statement coming from the IRGC. Brigadier General Hussein Salami. He said that Israel will face a crushing response and that its criminal acts in Lebanon come as a result of the Zionists' despair over their accumulated defeats. He also added a couple of things in a speech that he made that was reported in multiple online networks. This will lead to the demise of this bloodshedding entity soon. He also touched on the impact of the support front in Lebanon on the occupying entity, saying that Hezbollah targeted the depth of the criminal entity over the course of a year, militarily and intelligence-wise, specifically in Operation Arba'in, in reference to the attack that happened on the 8,200 unit. The cowardly enemy resorted to committing massacres, escaping direct confrontation with the fighters to delay its demise. He said that they will not achieve any result, and he also added, I congratulate you on behalf of the brothers in the IRGC for your honorable struggle in the most honorable battles with the enemy, sending that message to Hezbollah. So Iran is also getting on the line. Israel reported that the Iranian ambassador in Lebanon was wounded very heavily. But Iran denied. They said he was wounded, but not in a very bad manner. Israel also reported that approximately 15 people from the IRGC in Syria were killed as well, and dozens were wounded in the same attacks that they carried out on Lebanon. So when you talk about the devices that exploded, whether the pagers or the walkie-talkies, so it's not just Hezbollah involved here in Lebanon, you're also having Syria. Now Syria, they clearly were not participating in the same manner. They were not considered to be a part of the resistance fronts when it comes to the Gaza genocide, but they were part of the general resistance front when it comes to passing the weapons and arms, and when it comes to logistics and expertise and people and whatever the resistance needs in general. So what are we expecting here from Hezbollah? Because that's the main question that Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah did not really elaborate on, and I think he's done that deliberately. Usually you will get an idea as to where things are going from his speeches, but now he kept it very, very shady. And that is deliberate because he wants the Israelis to think. In Israel, of course, they've been analyzing. Some of them are trying to spin like a defeatist speech, Nasrallah's begging, these types of things. But they take what he says very seriously. And they monitor his speeches. So they clearly care about what he says to try and anticipate what's coming. But now he's not giving them anything to anticipate. However, judging by the scale of the attack, that we've had on Lebanon, you're talking about thousands of civilians who were wounded and dozens who were martyred in this barbaric mass terror attack against the Lebanese people. I do not think that Hezbollah will do something that Israel can contain easily. I think Hezbollah will be responding in a very blatant and strong manner that will potentially have more escalation. Now, even without that, without a big response on Israel coming from Hezbollah, because so far Hezbollah have been very calculated ever since the beginning of the war. They firstly declared that they do not want an all-out war, that they are not a participant in the war, but they are only a supporting front to have more pressure on Israel and participate in this war of attrition. And the biggest front in the war of attrition when it comes to Israel, but not in effect being a participant as Gaza is at the same level, an all-out war, because that has different meanings and different depths. Hezbollah have been the most effective with the level of impact they've had on Israel, militarily, politically, and on a societal level, and especially when it comes to the people who had to flee their homes from the north. Okay. They have been very calculated, but what Israel is doing, and again, Israel is escalating without any large response. So they've had day one of these attacks, day two. Today they've increased their explosions, and now they're warning everyone, prepare for very serious days to come and prepare to see things that you haven't seen before. Israel gave them now the excuse to do whatever they like. However, that does not mean that Hezbollah will all of a sudden start to send everything and go all out on Israel. That's not necessarily how they operate. And it's been clear, it's been evident ever since the beginning of their participation in Al-Aqsa flood that they do not operate based on emotions or instant responses. Their response to the attack to the assassination of Fuad Shukr came several weeks after. It was very specific, very targeted, and very limited as well. It was very contained because, again, Hezbollah do not want to be seen as a side who drags Lebanon to an all-out war or gives Israel an excuse to take Lebanon to an all-out war. However, their position is very clear when it comes to the support of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian case has been a core element when it comes to Hezbollah ever since its formation in 1982, and they always participate when the Palestinian people need them, let alone in the biggest massacre the Palestinian people faced ever since the establishment of the State of Israel. So that's not going to stop unless you stop the war in Gaza. Is Israel, that's another question here, is Israel trying to escalate with Lebanon to run away from Gaza, then reach a ceasefire with Gaza that will automatically stop the war with Lebanon? Because Hezbollah declared, if you want to stop our aggression, stop the war. That is an option. That's an option. However, that option is there so long as the balance, as the status quo, as the deterrence line is met. So long as Hezbollah have the deterrence that they've already had on Israel and restore it. Because with each of these attacks, you create a new equation. And usually if you do not respond, you send a message to your enemy that, well, I'm fine with you attacking a certain location because I'm not going to respond. And what's for sure is that Hezbollah will not allow that to happen. How and when, again, that's something we don't know. But in my opinion, it's not going to take too long before they have a massive response against Israel.